Hi, this is Ariel. Bonjour! Welcome to my channel where we make fun costumes and weird stuff. Have you seen my last project? It was a cape made of fiber optic fabric. It was a bit tricky to make, but it ended up really fun. But this was actually the first step of my autumn costume. I was planning to make an outfit inspired by the season. A classic mushroom. Mushrooms are so in right now. I had made this one 5 years ago. It was really cute, but it was not super well made. So I thought I would do another take on it and make it into something more wearable and use the light of the cape that I already made. Let's go to the forest. On verra si ça fait une bonne transition. Ou ça ferait une transition. I knew that I wanted to make a costume that was a bit whimsy but wearable, like a little Red Riding Hood. I wanted to make an ensemble, but I ended up scrapping the shorts because of lack of fabric. Now I can go material hunting in my stash. Once again, I don't want to buy anything new, so I will just change my design depending on the material that I have. Like a mushroom, I will adapt to my environment. I have different scraps of fabric in textures, in red and also in off-white. Now we need to combine them in a nice way. This is all I have in fabric. Not enough. So I think I'm going to scrap this and just use the wool for the cape and this for the bottom of the cape. I'm trying different combinations of fabrics to have this sort of gradient on the bottom of the cape, but I am pretty sure on the red wool. So let's just work on the mock-up and we'll fix those issues later. I'm taking out the creepy styrofoam head to put back on the mannequin to work on the hood. I made it slightly bigger using some batting and wig caps. So that's why it's very ugly but also useful because you can put pins through it. For the mock-up I'm using scraps of bed sheets as usual. That's why it's kind of pieced together, but it works, so it's okay. And it's not a very complicated shape. I just want it to be slightly bigger than the hood, so you can see the light inside. I start with the hood because I don't have enough wool to make a very long cape. And I don't really have a lot of flexibility for the hood. But I can change the length of the cape depending on how much I have left. And it's not much. So I'm shortening the cape. It will mostly cover the shoulders, which is enough, I think. This wool is very pleasant to cut, and also it doesn't fray, which makes it so comfortable to work with. I wanted the cape to be one piece, but even with shortening it, I had to piece it together. But it's not very visible. My iron is not very good and I don't have a tailor clapper, but this piece of wood kind of works the same to flatten my seams. Flat and beautiful. You know, I'm working pretty hard to make these videos. I want to make my channel more successful, more enjoyable, and I'm trying to be a full-time YouTuber. That is why I'm super excited to say that today this video is sponsored by NordVPN. NordVPN is the fastest virtual private network service designed to keep your online activities safe. It creates a secure and private connection to the internet. I spend a lot of time online searching for weird things. As a costume maker, crafter, LARPer, the people spying on my data are probably very confused. So NordVPN creates an encrypted tunnel to protect your personal data and your communications. It hides your IP address and it lets you use safely the public Wi-Fi. If you want to access something not available in your country, NordVPN allows you to select from over 50 countries, so you can change your virtual location and get better deals, or maybe watch those shows that Netflix is hiding from you. You can visit nordvpn.com/hazariel to get an exclusive deal. And it is risk-free with NordVPN 30 days money-back guarantee. Thank you for sponsoring this channel. And now, back to work. So with this done, I need to find... With this done, I'm going to work on the color. A lot of the mushrooms that I've seen have this very nice gradient color that is a little bit orange and beige on the edge of the mushroom. So I think I'm going to recreate this using violence. Let me explain. I bought this a few years ago. This is wool for felting. The fibers are loose, they are not woven into a thread or knitted. And with this you can make your own felt fabric and also add wool colors to already made wool. I has used this technique to make this. You can mush the fibers together to make your own felt, and that way you can control the color. It's a bit old, but it still looks okay. I do LARP. Yeah. Anyway, let's use this to make a gradient all around the cape using violets. The way it works is that you have this as your surface. It's kind of a brush, but very stiff. And then you have this tool that holds a few felting needles. And these needles are barbed, which will push the fibers through themselves. So by adding wool fibers on wool, I'm kind of weaving them together. It's weird to explain, but you see the result. This is a test piece, so I'm doing it a few times on each side to make sure that the fibers are secure. I really like the organic effect it has. Let's start with some orange. The blue brush thing is nice to use, but actually I need a bigger surface. So a piece of packing foam will also do the job. You just need to make sure that the needles will go through it without getting damaged. You see how the fibers are going through it? This is very satisfying. A hairbrush is also very useful for this step. Seriously, this technique is so pleasant. I highly recommend. This is also a great way to relieve tension or anger. I am happy with the orange layer, so now I can add some off-white. Same process, except I want some kind of gradient. So I'm adding those fibers a bit lower, and then I secure the ends and fold the rest to make the color more intense at the base. And to complete the gradient, I added one last color in white this time. This time the fibers are a bit too long, so I'm just cutting them in half. Which is good because I almost didn't have enough. As pleasant as this technique is, those needles are very sharp, and I stabbed myself a total of 3 times. Yes, it went through the finger. Look at the back of the cape. It looks kind of frosted, I really like this. But to secure the fibers in place, I need to punch all of this on the back and then on the front again. I am using this instead of the white foam, now that I don't need to lay all the wool really flat and have a big surface to work on. This thing, which is basically a brush, it is easier to stab. Even though it doesn't require a lot of strength to stab the wool, if you multiply it by a few thousand, this makes it easier on your wrists. And then again, one last time on the front, making sure that the fibers are in the right direction. And then I can remove the excess. Now that we have the shoulders, let's assemble our hood. This cape will not be lined because I need the light to go through it. So I'm securing the edge of my seams by hand, using a stitch that I don't know the name of. And now it's time to add those little mushroom spots. For this, I just pinned the pieces on my mannequin. Look at this little Red Riding Hood. It's going to be so cute. I took my scraps of white paper or fabric lying around, and I cut them into irregular circles to arrange them in a way that I like. They are pinned in place, and now I can take the thing off and just draw where they are. I want to make holes in those spots and cover them in a transparent fabric. That way, hopefully, the light will go through it. I think that it will make the cape look very whimsical. I hope that it works. I cut the red wool to be slightly smaller than my spot, and I used the piece as a pattern to cut a layer of tulle and 2 layers of lace, of this super expensive lace that I have left from a wedding dress that I made a few years back. Not for me. Let's add the tulle and then some fibers on top of it. My hope is that the wool will hold all the layers together and I don't need to sew them in place. And it failed. Because the punching, it tends to reduce the size of your fabric, so they ended up too small to cover the hole. But by making it bigger, it did work pretty well. So tulle, fibers, lace, and then more fibers all around to secure it. I really like how it blends the lace with the wool without making a very harsh edge. And also it gets a little bit fuzzy, just like mold, so we are still on the mushroom theme here. I think it will enhance the glowing effect with the lights. Okay, it works. Now let's upscale this process. Montage! Whew, we are close. Now let's finish the bottom edge of the cape. I'm using some white cotton scraps to make a binding all around the edge of my cape. But I don't want that edge to be flat. I want it to have some shape, so I'm going to stuff it like a teddy bear. And I ran out of stuffing, but I had some scraps of batting, which kind of works the same. We just want something with volume and lightweight. I'm just pinning the stuffing inside this white cotton. So I've pinned it in place, but look, it doesn't stay the way I want, because I want it to stay closer to the underlayer, which will be light up. So I think I'm just going to add some horsehair on the inside. This is fun, but it's not what I want. Removing the stuffing and adding horsehair. My white binding still is very useful to cover it. Okay, so I've pinned the horsehair in place and it will flare out a bit, which I think looks kind of mushroomy, but it will be too far from the underlayer. I tried adding the little trim that I had in mind. I think it looks very cute, but now that it's flat, I don't think it's that interesting anymore. This shape I really like, so if I add the trim underneath, and maybe if you just see a little bit of it, but it's lower and it will blend with this when I make it into a fringe, I think that's the way to go. Because this shape really works, I think. The horsehair is pinned in place all around the cape, and as I am sewing it by hand, I add the little funky trim. This trim I got from an old rotting basement with a bunch of other stuff, and I think it might be 100 years old. Let's hope it's not. Anyways, it's always very pleasant to sew wool by hand, and I'm making sure that I don't have visible stitching on the outside. I had forgotten a seam before. Let's just stitch it down now. The front of the hood is just folded twice and stitched by hand. And then let's assemble the top and bottom. I pin them in place and add pleats in a kind of symmetrical way, and I sew it by machine. The top and bottom are attached, and now I think I'm going to add a big bow at the front. I don't have enough of this left, but I have. It would look okay. I think this one adds a little nice accents, and it's the same color as this. Let's just make 2 long pieces for the bow, with the ends very pointy, because I think it looks very cute for a bow. And I also use this orange fabric to bind the edge of the neckline. I sew the bow pieces to the neckline to make sure they are very secure with a big strong thread. It's black, but that's okay, it will be covered later with the binding. Almost done! Now I need to cut the fiber optic cape. This is a bit scary. We want it to slightly poke out of the red cape and fringe it into an organic shape. I just cut half of the cape and fold it to cut the other side to make sure they are symmetrical. I also mark with chalk a line that will be used for stitching. Remember, I want to unravel all the fibers of this fabric, but I don't want it to go too high, so the stitching will stop that. Just a zigzag on this line. And now it is the very tedious time to unravel everything. And a little haircut to make the thing look more organic. I did not expect to have to watch a few haircut tutorials for this project. Now the two capes can be combined. I'm just adding a few stitches to make sure that the hoods stay together. I'm making them very big, so it will be easy to separate. Because the fiber optic cape I think I can use for a lot of other costumes. Let's keep the possibilities open. Okay, I couldn't resist a final touch. These little glass beads are from an old broken chandelier. And I'm sewing a few of them on top of the hood so they will look like raindrops. Sewing them with a transparent thread. I'm not sure that the effect works, but I really like the idea. It's done. Give a like to this video.